Hey folks, Ray from DCRainmaker.com here, taking the new Tacx Flux S Smart Trainer. Now you may be wondering what the difference between this and the Flux 2 Smart Trainer is, and also compared to the original Flux. And there are a bunch of minor differences. Essentially though, what you gotta know is that the Flux S is the basically second generation Flux unit, just sort of revamped, whereas the Flux 2 is the new generation. It's really confusing when you stop and think about it for a second. So essentially there was the Flux. The original Flux came out 2 summers ago. And then over the last 2 years, they continued to add a bunch of things along the way. Little tweaks, mostly hardware tweaks. They fixed a bunch of stuff after this whole like recall, not really recall, like a non-recall event sort of thing where they had to fix a bunch of trainers that initially came out in that first kind of 6 or 8 months. So within that, they made a bunch of manufacturing changes. All these tweaks led up to basically this past spring. And by the time I got to this past spring, that'd be spring of 2018, they kind of had what they deemed as a new trainer. So they're calling that the Flux S. The main physical difference though between the Flux S and the original Flux trainer is really derailleur cage support, in particular long derailleur cage support. For those of you that may have a longer derailleur cage, it can go ahead and support that. So they pretty much just shrunk the feet lower to the ground a little bit, or increased the height, however you want to look at it, between where you go and put your bike on and where the derailleur cage would come down and swing and potentially hit the feet. Otherwise, externally speaking, you won't notice any other differences. And in fact, if you compare this to the Flux 2, which is the trainer they announced back at Eurobike, externally, again, not a lot of differences. It's internally that you're going to see those differences. In the case of the Flux 2, it has a higher gradient support, 16% incline versus 10% on this trainer here. It theoretically has a higher accuracy tolerance, plus or minus 2% versus plus or minus 3% here. It also can go ahead and simulate those higher grades, but at lower speeds. So that's kind of important, something that's been not talked about a lot in the trainer world over the last couple of years, but it's something that's becoming more and more interesting as people start to get into, steeper climbs in training software, being able to simulate that at lower speeds. Perhaps though it's easier to put up one simple graph of all those changes right now that shows you the difference between everything on those 3 different units. The original Flux trainer is being phased out, so it's essentially just the Flux S, which is like the lower end one, and the Flux 2, which is the higher end one, separated by $150. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and crack this thing open and show you what's inside of it. So right here, we'll go ahead and just pop this off that little piece there. This is brand new. I've not opened it, not ridden on it at all. Straight from the factory. And I will have the Flux 2 coming up here soon. I should have that trainer in the next week or so. So we'll take this, put this out of the way. So we've got a power cable. We've got, it looks like a rear skewer here, the bolts to attach the feet, and then one, but no through axle adapters. So that's actually one important difference between this and the Flux 2. The Flux 2 comes with the through axle adapters. For the Flux S, you have to go and buy them. They have accessory kits that you can purchase afterwards. Let's see, a gift card for Tacx training software for 30 days, and then a card to call customer support, and a little manual that we won't read at all. Take this out here. There's something up. It's just a heavy chunk of foam. There we go. And then we have, looks like the entire feet portion right there. So we'll put that down. There we go. And then we have the trainer. There we go. So trainer here definitely got some weight to it. Of course, the weight comes from the flywheel. The bigger the flywheel, basically the more realistic it feels from a road-like feel standpoint. And that's it. There's nothing else in there but foam. I don't think there's anything else in there. Nope, that's just foam. So let's put this out of the way over here. Tidy that up. Now, all of these trainers that are a bit less expensive, basically under $1,100 or so, don't come with a cassette. You'll notice if we remove the little condom thing right there, no cassette on there, which means you got to supply your own cassette. Typically speaking, a cassette's going to run you about $50 or so, and you want to make sure you have some of the tools. Chain whip, for example, this little piece that goes ahead and it tightens it in there, and then theoretically this, if you have this, there are some tools that combine these together so you don't have both pieces. And then of course the actual cassette itself. So I actually, ironically enough, stole this off of my older Flux trainer to go ahead and put on this right here. So I'm going to put on that in a second. First we're going to install the feet though. Should be pretty straightforward, I'm guessing. I got to go back this way, in fact. Gift card goes over there, power cable goes over there. Get this cracked open. There we go. So we just got the wrench, 2 bolts, spacer, sorry, 2 washers, 2 bolts, wrench, quick release, and a little adapter that'll go probably like that on the back side here. There we go. Just take this. There we go, simple enough. Okay, we're done with that piece there. That was obviously pretty complex. We do not need the spacer because I'm doing 11-speed cassette on there. If you're doing a 10-speed, you typically need that. So I'll put this off the side for right now. Put that back there in the corner of crap. Put those back there too. We will need this power cable here. Get this all untangled. There we go. I'm going to wait to plug that in actually until I get a cassette on there, just for the fun of it. And this will go on after the cassette. I totally forgot the washers. Overrated. Don't need the washers. They just go on the feet. This isn't going anywhere. All good. Moving along, cassette. So this part, we'll just get this slapped in there real quick. And my hands will be nice and greasy after this. Okay, so now we go ahead and get the part where we put the cap on the front. Right there, and then we take this in, so we'll just... Okay, interestingly bizarre but true story here. I had it stolen off this, as I mentioned, off the original Flux. Has a Edco cap on it, but this one actually doesn't fit this Flux S, which is sort of strange to me. So I'm gonna grab this other one I stole off of the Hammer for now, and this fits it nicely here, so that'll be good. We'll get this all tightened up here. There we go. And the key thing is when you do install these, make sure there's no play. So if I go like this, you shouldn't hear any like rattle or play or like that. And then you're ready to roll. So we're gonna put this junk back in the back here, clean things up a little bit. Put that there for now. And then we've got this. This is our quick release skewer. Toss this in. And Bob's your uncle. Okay, so slide this back to there. Plug her on in. And of course, because it is a direct drive trainer, that means your rear wheel is taken off. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, now there is no front wheel block on this. If you prefer riding with a front wheel block, you'll go ahead and just want to simply put one on there, buy one online for like $5 or $10. I'll drop a link down in the description there. But otherwise, we're ready to roll. So I'm gonna go and get this pedaled here. Let you listen to it for a couple seconds. I do hear a little bit of like a wonk wonk sound. It's just kind of odd, so I'm curious to see if that goes away after the first ride. So now keep in mind, I haven't really done anything special in terms of cleaning for my drivetrain here. Sort of is what it is, just kind of my average cleanliness level, which is pretty low. So you can hear a little bit of that drivetrain sound there, but I think that's normal for most people. Okay, so we'll get this paired up to Zwift here. So the way that works, you just click on power source, and we should see the Tacx Flux down there at the very, very bottom. Showing up as a smart trainer there. Click on that. And it's got both controllable and power source, which is what we want here. We'll go over to cadence and we'll get the cadence added as well. In this case, you can do cadence from the Tacx trainers, which is nice. Something that the Wahoo trainers, for example, don't have. And then heart rate, we'll see if I've got my heart rate strap. There we go. We've got the Polar H7 today on there. So tap up that. We're ready to roll here. Click on let's go. And I'll go ahead and I'll start my session and then I'll report back afterwards. I'll go back to the video and we can see whether or not this little kind of wobble sound just gets rid of itself after the first few minutes here of riding, which is sometimes common for Tacx trainers in particular. It seems like you need like a ride or so to get rid of things. Okay, so here we are 43 minutes and 20 seconds later, and I can still hear that sound. Just to show you real quick, shift down so you can get it a little clearer. It sounds sort of like rubbing. You hear like a little whoop, whoop. So I'm not quite sure what's up. I'm gonna go ahead and take a little video clip and do exactly what you do and shoot it over Tacx and see what happens. I'll circle back in probably a couple days. Okay, so here we are about a week later now. A week later and one new trainer later. Remember left off, basically we had this kind of wonky sound, like a bit of a wonk, wonk, wonk sort of sound as we were pedaling. Couldn't really figure it out. I hit up Tacx, I shot them a quick little cell phone video of it, and they immediately grabbed the trainer, took it back. They actually are pretty close here in Amsterdam, and dropped off a new one. The new one does not have that issue, and they went and pulled apart the old one to figure out what's going on there, and they found out, I guess there was extra plastic somewhere inside there, and as a result, it was rubbing there and basically making that womp 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 sound. The company said that they've gone ahead and checked other trainers as well as implemented new kind of QA, quality control procedures, inside of their factory so that it doesn't happen again. Obviously, I don't know whether or not I was like the only odd duck or if there's others. Certainly those that are familiar with the Tacx lineup will know that Tacx had a lot of problems 2 years ago when they first announced the Flux or first released the Flux, primarily with quality control as well. So don't know if it's like a one-time thing or not. I have no way of knowing that. We'll have to find that out over time, and quite frankly, you'll have to find that out whether or not it's going to be the case. I'm guessing it's somewhat surprising me, to be honest, because remember the Flux S is just simply a Flux with some new updates they've been making for the last 6 months anyways. So it is sort of odd for that to happen, given that this is the exact same trainer they've been building all along. So hopefully it's just a one-off. In any case, the question is just to show you what the sound sounds like. I've done, I think, 5 rides on it now, 5 full rides on it with 0 issues at all. So let me just kind of give you a quick roll through this just so you can hear and believe me that there's nothing weird going on here. Listen to it about 5-10 seconds. So that just went through about 600 plus watts there. No issues. Of course, sound is connected more to speed than wattage, but as you can hear, no want sound. Basically the exact same sound as before, minus the want sound. And so not too bad, you know, kind of the same as most of the trainers in this ballpark. Okay, so last but not least, let's go ahead and do a quick look at the accuracy side of things, and then we'll wrap it all up. Okay, so here we are looking at the power data from those 3 different units, and what I had on this bike was a SRM exact power meter, it's a pedal-based power meter, as well as the Stages LR, which is their dual power meter, so 2 dual power meters plus the Flux S, and you see at a high level, things look pretty darn close. If I go and zoom in on some of these sections right here, you'll see some slight differences between each unit, and that's pretty much normal, but things are pretty close. Up like the peak right here, these are within 1 watt of each other at 340 watts between that and the Stages. The SRM pedal is a little bit higher, as I would expect actually. Typically the trainer should be the lowest of the power meter values since that's closest to the ground. So the highest is closest to your leg, your foot. So that actually matches here, which is pretty much good. If we go back to this final sprint here at the very end, you'll see things are pretty close. The Flux is definitely lower than the rest of them, which is normal again. And when you talk about sprint power, you don't really expect things to be the exact same at the max power level. Still, as we see them kind of settle right at this point right there, the Stages LR is at 588 watts, whereas the Flux is at 585 watts, so it's in 3 watts, well within the 3%, plus or minus 3% of the unit itself. And even compared to the SRM pedal, which is a little bit higher than the other ones there, that's at 605 watts. So keep in mind, again, plus or minus 3%, so roughly 3 times 6 is 18 watts, so you're pretty darn close there, within exactly the plus or minus 3% spec there. And of course, given that the Flux is lower than that, that's even closer than in reality. Switching over to a session I did on TrainerRoad for 30 by 30 intervals here, you can see this build up here as things go through it. So in this case, the data from the Flux S will look a little more smooth because it is in erg mode versus the power meter is a little more wobbly, and that's what you see here as well. And in this case, right there, you'll notice that the Flux S is showing a little bit higher than the others.
others, and this is because I was in a different gearing. It's one of the caveats of some of the lower end trainers, not really lower end, like mid-range and lower end trainers, is certain gearing that's tough to get the wattage. And in this first interval, actually, it failed to set the wattage as high as I wanted it to because of the gearing combination I had. And TrainerRoad, in fact, warns about this in its screen when you open up a new workout. So I went ahead and changed the gearing that I had just by shifting. And you can see these other ones here, it's much, much closer. Then the wobbliness that you see in the other units is just simply because I can't hold my power that well. These last three, for example, right there, I had gone ahead and done these after the Zwift workout, and that was a poor maneuver on my part, and just simply how to hold those wattages for those 30 by 30 intervals. But the trainer itself does trend through all the middle of those, as you would expect. If I look at one final screen right here, you can see again, pretty darn close across the board for all these, and I look at the sprints and stuff like that, it's almost identical to them. If I go down to the mean max power here at the bottom, you'll see that it's very, very close, and this allows me to compare the power across the entire chart. So this is actually a really good way of looking at that to see how things trend.
Okay, there you saw it in the accuracy, no issues at all. It's spot on, I've had no problems there. No real other issues at all. I mean, connectivity-wise, it's been strong. It just works with all the apps, TrainerRoad, Zwift. I've tried them both with this. I'm pretty happy. Calibration worked, so it's basically just the Flux that you know and love, except with an S after it. As I said before, it's not a lot of change there. Definitely something to consider. That price point is very, very solid. One of the lowest price points we've seen for a direct drive smart trainer. And it's something that, aside from the one bad unit I got, hopefully is kind of like a known good across the board. But again, I'll have to see over time. With that, thanks for watching. Go ahead and whack that like button at the bottom there if you found this interesting. It really helps out the channel. Or the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. That way you get plenty more sports technology goodness on the way. Have a good one.